As always, kudos to the organizers, kudos to Amit, to Anubhuti, to Roshan for pulling off such stellar lineup of speakers. Our next speaker is Brenda Darden Wilkerson, President and CEO of AnitaB.org, a global nonprofit organization that connects, inspires, and strives for greater equality for women and non-binary technologists in business, academia, and government. Brenda is an advocate for access, opportunity, and social justice for historically excluded communities in technology. She founded the original organization called Computer Science for All, building computer science classes into the curriculum for every student in the Chicago public schools while she was the CEO. Prior to joining AnitaB.org, Brenda was a driving force behind the launch of the National Center for Women in Information Technology and was appointed to the White House's Tech Inclusion Task Force. She was named to the 2023 Forbes 50 over 50 list for impact. Today, as she joins us in Pune, she will speak about the power of community building and its role in making the world a better place. Ladies and gentlemen, Brenda.
Well, hello, everybody. This is a beautiful crowd. I'm so excited to be here and to talk to you about something that's really, really important to me. As you heard, I'm the president and CEO of an organization called the Anita Borg Institute, better known as AnitaB.org. And we're a global nonprofit dedicated to gender parity and to pay parity, gender equity and pay parity in tech. We're also the host of the Grace Hopper Celebration, which is the largest tech conference for women technologists in the world. We have one in the US, and we also have one here in India, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. As a nonprofit leader and a social justice advocate, my goal in work and life is to make the world better. And I know there are so many of you out there who feel the very same way. I am sure that you understand that in order to do that, one of the best strategies is to build a community. In fact, community is one of the greatest forces we have for getting good work done that changes the world. In fact, community building is a powerful tool for social change, especially in the diverse and complex world that we live in today. And so many people have been talking about that. Across the globe, so many groups, including those that I represent, which are women and non-binary individuals, have harnessed the power of community to address pressing issues and to foster social cohesion. I'm going to share some experiences with you today about the impact of communities and some of the challenges that they face and some of the initiatives that have been successful. And I hope to inspire some of you to get started building communities right where you are, if you haven't already. So at its core, community is about connection. It's about people coming together, not just to share space, but experiences, dreams, and responsibilities. This is a collective bond that is not just a social construct. It's a fundamental aspect of our humanity. Community is the framework for support, growth, and transformation. Now, the type of community that affects positive change, I believe, goes beyond just the social interaction of us getting together. It's the kind that actively shapes the environment in which individuals not only live, but can thrive. So let's talk about why community matters. First of all, we know that there's strength in unity. We're experiencing it here today. Communities empower individuals by providing a support structure that magnifies each individual's strengths and mitigates each individual's weaknesses. When people unite with a shared purpose, they become stronger than the sum of their parts. For example, movements like #MeToo, they gained international renown, providing a platform for women to share their experiences of sexual harassment and assault. And this fostered a community of support and advocacy. Collective efforts like these can lead to tangible, positive changes that an individual alone might struggle to achieve. There's also resilience in adversity. We know that during challenging times, a community can be a lifeline. Consider natural disasters, or economic hardship, or even personal loss. Communities can offer emotional and practical support. For instance, we all experienced the COVID-19 global pandemic. And during that time, collective action and solidarity aided in our recovery and helped us rebuild our lives. Community also fosters inclusivity. When you build inclusive communities where diversity is not only accepted but celebrated, that inclusivity strengthens communities by integrating the various perspectives and skills, which in turn enriches into problem solving and innovation, and we know we all need that. This diversity helps to create a more vibrant and dynamic society where everyone has a voice and contributes to the common good. The most important type of community is one that finds the gaps. I have found that that makes organizations, individuals even, more successful when you can find a gap that you might be experiencing and then fill it. If everyone across the globe, no matter the field, would ask, what needs do I see? It would be the beginning of creating solutions to so many problems that each of us experience in the world. Answering that question is, in fact, one of the main purposes for nonprofits such as ours. But that impact is not just limited to nonprofits or to organizations in general. There is great opportunity for each of us to leave our mark on humanity. And it's important to recognize that each of us has the potential to be a catalyst for change in our own spaces. It's about recognizing our agency and understanding that our lens, formed by our own unique experiences, can help us to be transformative. Let me give you a couple examples. Right here in India, there was an organization called the Self-Employed Women's Association. It was founded in 1972 by Ella Bhatt, and it's considered one of the first and most prominent community organizations in India, especially concerning women. SEWA initially focused on organizing self-employed women, especially in the informal sector, such as street vendors or home-based workers. It ended up giving women the ability to have access to health care, to have access to education, and it has grown to a membership of over 2 million people across India. The important thing to share here is not only did it help the women, but the knock-on effect was that because the women were supported, so were their children and other people who were from marginalized groups. So those women experienced making change because of the gaps that they found, and they worked to fill them. Another example is from Europe. There's an organization called the Society for Promoting the Employment of Women, SPEW. Now, that was established in London, founded by a group of women, including Jessie Boucheret, and it aimed to improve employment opportunities for women at the time. You see, middle-class women could only be either a governor, or a lady's companion. But now this organization today is known as Futures for Women, and it made it acceptable way back in the 19th century for women to become typists, hairdressers, and lots of other things. The point is that the economic impact of recognizing that gap of jobs not available for women not only impacted those women, but their communities and that whole society. The last example I give is close to home, and it's part of my own personal journey. You see, before college, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. But by divine providence, I ended up being an engineer, a computer scientist. As an undergraduate student on my pre-med journey, I chose biomedical engineering as a major to get prepared. And it turns out the requirement was that I had to take 2 programming classes. Well, I had never had programming before. It wasn't available in my schools. Even though I was rich in science, I was not rich in computer science. Well, it changed my trajectory, and even though I found that I had a love for all things tech, I soon found another gap. It was that even though tech can be very transformative, it's overshadowed by the deep systemic barriers to access that I saw. What I learned in my classes is that because of the homogeneous nature of the people who taught the classes, and many times of the leadership of tech communities, it also had the power to exclude large swaths of people, people who are women, people who have intersectional identities, people who are traditionally overlooked. So, armed with knowing that a requirement was what introduced me to this opportunity, I figured the best way was to tackle access for others like me was to begin in the beginning, in the classroom, with another requirement. That led me, as you heard, to founding an initiative called Computer Science for All, which required all students to take at least one computer science class to graduate. In other words, we were able to change the graduation requirements that had been in place for over a century. And I'm also proud to say that I got to work with the Obama administration's initiative of the same name, which instituted changes across our nation. But I knew that wasn't enough from my own experience. What I knew from being a computer scientist out in the industry is that just having the knowledge would not open me up for opportunity. And so in 2017, I took on this new challenge of making sure that the tech industry was more representative of all the people that tech is created for, which is each and every one of us. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the community on which our organization is founded. In 1987, Dr. Anita Borg formed an organization called Sisters, S-Y-S-T-E-R-S, System Sisters. She and 12 women got together and formed basically a virtual email list where tech women were free to be able to call up each other and share resources and also challenges. Once again, recognizing that gap, that they didn't have that support in their workplaces and creating it, creating a very strong community. Now, the success and the impact of that community led to the founding of the Grace Hopper Celebration I mentioned. It is the largest conference for women in the world. And it's inspired by U.S. Navy Rear Admiral Grace Murray Hopper. I hope you've heard of her. She's said to be the mother of software. And it was because these women got tired of attending conferences where they were maybe the only woman. And so in this 1987, Dr. Anita Borg and her partner, Telly Whitney, created the celebration to offer women a chance to improve their technical skills and to network with one another. And a conference that started with 500 women now stands as this conference that has had in attendance as many as 40,000. And just 3 years later, Anita founded the nonprofit organization originally known as the Institute for Women in Technology, and now AnitaB.org. We renamed it after her death. Just like today, the aim of IWT was to increase the representation of women in technical fields, enabling the creation of more tech by women, and they're having the impact on the industry. Also to build a pipeline of women into technology. And 10 years after that, Dr. Whitney formed the AnitaB.org India organization. Anita believed, just as I do, and it has been proven time and time again, that companies who actively include women benefit from increased innovation and better bottom line results. She proposed that technology will solve more of the world's problems when women, who are over 50% of the world's population, are there imagining and creating that technology. And it is community that has helped us be there. There is no point in advocating for and achieving gender equity and pay parity if there is no community to support it. And so that's what we do. Now, a pillar of our community is our membership platform. We provide community for women technologists worldwide, career resources, mentorship, all of the things. Our inclusive tech community is over 106,000 people from 100 different countries, and we support and empower 46 local communities around the world. These communities host events, both in person and virtually, and it provides a safe place to share best practices, inspiration, tips, ideas, find our partners. We've had people come together and form companies because they found their partners in that space. Oftentimes, women in tech can feel like we're the only ones there, so to speak. But having that sense of community helps us realize that there are other women who feel the same, and that the intended impact of community is to make sure that no one feels like they're alone. So, to me, the underlying goal of our organization is to make sure that women have a path in and a way to stay. The data shows that most tech women leave tech at age 35. I left at 34. GHC and other things that we do provide our community at every age and every stage of their career the support they need to remain and to thrive. Now, our work in India is currently over 5,500 strong, and it continues to grow every day. They are the backbone and the fuel that drives us to do the work that we invest in to build a robust ecosystem. In recent times, our community in India has come together as a community across the country to discuss safe workplaces, bias, diversity, equity, inclusion, ethics, career shifts, imposter syndrome, and so many more things. We had a listening circle that we hosted following the Kolkata incident that was a testament to the non-judgmental safe spaces that allow for sharing and collective healing. So who are we really? We are a community that is a global, human-centered tech organization. What's most important that I want you to remember about this conversation is that we need to make tech human-centered, make it always focused on people. Many people, when they think of tech, they think of code, they think of technical things, and it is all of that. But the highest use of tech is in service of humanity. And our community is in service of that humanity. That's why that we believe that community is not only important to maintain, but to build, so that we can have a strong set of people to address the needs of humanity. So now I've talked about some of the good reasons for community. Let's talk about some of the challenges. When we build strong communities, we can deeply do rewarding work, and we can make the world a better place. But the challenges and the barriers are there. Diverse needs and expectations always are going to come up when you have people that get together. There is no one size fits all. Communication gaps, which is what we've been talking about at this conference, they always occur if we don't keep the lines of communication open. Misunderstandings and the lack of information can lead to frustration and disengagement, and then the whole thing falls apart. Then there's resource limitations. I could talk all day about that. Limited financial, human, and material resources can hinder our ability to organize events, to provide services that are so desperately needed. Engagement and participation. We're all busy. Getting people to actively participate, engage in community can be difficult. People have busy lives and they may not always prioritize community involvement. And then there's inclusivity and equity. We have to ensure that in a community that people are seen and valued, that in diverse communities with backgrounds and perspectives, that they're all recognized. There have been numerous recent statements made by companies either drastically scaling back or terminating their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the US. Therefore, inclusivity and equity will continue to be barriers for them. At the foundation of all of this is trust. People's systems thrive on trust, and they break down when trust breaks down. And so transparency is important, and also the mitigation of misinformation is paramount. We heard just earlier about some of the economic factors that are at play, political issues, social unrest. All of those things can break down our ability to have great community. So addressing these challenges are paramount. I'm privileged in my role to be able to travel to various parts of the world, having these crucial conversations on these important topics. I stand here before you today acknowledging that while issues vary from country to country, there's no arguing that one underlying theme is the need for community. And while change doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen alone. So what can we do? We can strengthen communities. We can foster open communication. We can encourage people to participate. Take part right where you are. If you see a gap, take a step to fill it. You can start a brand new community that can actually answer a question that's been open around the world for decades. Working to strengthen our communities will help us to realize and harness our collective power. Collective power is something that I often speak about because, like I said before, no one succeeds in change alone. So I'll leave you with this. Community creates a collective force that surpasses the capabilities of any one person. It's the recognition that while we are powerful as individuals, together we can achieve feats that transcend our individual capabilities. Community, it doesn't dilute individualism, it enriches it. Thank you.
That was great. So I got this extra chair because I've got these ex-colleagues who I've worked many years ago who have promised they'll sit and listen to your answers, but my questions. So Brenda, great, lovely presentation.
Thank you.
You know, while I was sitting in the corner listening to you, and I thought about, just my own journey, somebody who's worked in multiple agencies, I live in Amsterdam, I work in a global role, but I still feel humbled to what you achieved. And I think we need more Santas like you in this world who fight the odds and build hope and optimism. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. That was very kind of you, Ashish.
So I think what I want to do is, I think we're conscious, we've got 19 minutes, is get to know, you told everything about Anita.org, but I think what I'm interested in is, who's Brenda? I think every organization is built with people, and I think the key thing in that is, we need those heroes to be celebrated and talk about their journey. So, simple question, how did you find your purpose?
Yeah.
Did you find an idol? Did you have a cheerleader?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I really love to share, especially when there are young people in the room. As I mentioned, I was supposed to be a doctor, and that was as much my parents' idea as was mine. And it was drilled into me for years. And so, of course, when I changed direction, they were very disappointed. And so, therefore, I was disappointed in myself. And so becoming a computer scientist was a great feat, but it came with all these challenges where, I was the only woman in the room. Sometimes the pressure was I was the young woman in the room, and then when I became the older woman in the room, there were pressures. There were all these things, and none of these things had been my life plan. And so people will say, I talk to young people, and they know what they want to do, and I did too. But it turns out that all of those side trips that I ended up taking prepared me to be able to serve. If I had not had those challenges, if I had not had to question and listen and wait and wonder, in the pressure of that situation came my purpose. It's when I figured out what I had been missing, what could have made life easier for me in my education, in my work life, that I was able to create those types of bridges for others. And so in the end, it turned out to be life education that went beyond formal education that caused me to figure out what I actually had to contribute.
Yeah, I love the answer. I think I would attribute this to, I've got a lovely quote which says, about Muhammad Ali, the world famous boxer, the fight is won or lost far away from the witness, behind the lines, in a gym or out on the road, long before I dance under the lights. So there was a lot of rigor. You've been on the sidelines building this,
Yeah.
fighting the odds. is there any, any story or anything which comes to your mind where you just felt, I've been pushed and I need to stand on my own, but I'm going to do this alone?
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone wants to be part of a group of people or part of folks that believe the same things that you do. But the crucible of figuring out what it is you really believe many times is in the aloneness.
Yes.
And the aloneness has a lot of different versions and varieties. Aloneness could be, I remember many times my professors being very cold and really not interested in that woman being in the classroom. So the first thing I had to do was learn how to learn on my own because I wasn't really getting it from my professors. That turned out to be a really good life lesson, right? Sometimes the aloneness is that when you finally figure out what it is you're supposed to do or you want to do, there isn't anybody else who either understands what you're talking about or agrees with you. And if you decide to go on and do it anyway, you're sort of doing it alone. But there's benefits to that. I remember when I was forming Computer Science for All, people were like, what are you even talking about? Why would you think that our kids could do this? We don't have teachers who could teach this. And so I got to iterate sort of on the side without a lot of attention because I didn't have people who believed in me. And so you can make mistakes and iterate and trip up and keep trying. It's actually easier when people aren't looking or when people discount you than once they are expecting you to be that person. So it's a balance between, it was an important part of my growing up, should I say. It was an important part of my maturity to understand that seed that gets planted in you, that becomes your purpose, it's just like a natural seed. It's in the dark first, and it takes root and it goes down before it comes up.
Yeah, I love that. I think, absolutely great answer. And I think this is also, a lot of the younger generation comms folks are sitting here. You will win a battle, but it's going to take time. And you got to have the gut to stay in there for the long, because nothing is won quickly. In social media, yes, but in real life, it's very different. I want to talk about, I think you spoke about tech diversity. You've been in congressional hearings. You've been called to talk about technology benefits. What I want to know is, here, if I look at the crowd, I look at somebody like me who would be a fossil and 20% of us here, but mostly the younger folks here. And they all live in a different world. They've grown up with technology. So would you talk about, especially you dealing with vulnerable folks, how does technology become a catalyst, but also a curse?
Sure. So when you think about, my topic, which was talking about community, when Anita started that list for sisters, it was a simple email list, which email was even in its infancy. So it was a big deal, but it was very basic, right? And so we had to email each other, and if you moved, most of the time your email was at work, and so if you moved to a different job, now I don't know how to connect with you. And so it was hard to be in touch. It was harder. It was more deliberate. You had to work at being in touch and communicating with each other. Now, you don't have to work at it at all. It's in your face. People can find you even if you don't want to be found. Now, the positive is people can find you, and you can find your people in a shorter period of time with less effort. The negative is you don't build a muscle unless you use it. Being deliberate about seeking, knowing what it is that you're after, builds character that you just don't get when it's just fallen on you. And so you have to work in your own routine of being deliberate. For instance, if you're going to keep up with some of the people that you met here today, or if you've met at other conferences, you're going, I'm going to stay in touch with you. I'm going to reach out to you on LinkedIn. You actually have to do that. Right? Yeah. Or you actually have to answer when they reach out to you. Yeah. And so one of the habits that I tried to form was like reach out Tuesday. So on my calendar, I put 30 minutes where I'm going to spend time on Tuesdays actually returning, actually reading the reach outs, actually thinking of who I'm going to specifically reach out to. Because it was easy, now we don't do it. When it was hard, there was more of a discipline. Yeah. And so it's a balance of making sure that your conveniences don't become inconvenient.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we spoke about being victims of teenage kids who are lost in TikTok or any other thing. And one of the things we tell them is get your bed done, brush, and that builds a habit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully. I think the other question is I want to talk about, I think the big elephant in the room is AI. I mean, there are two sides on it. People fall in love, people are scared, and some are just fence-sitting. I mean, do you hear that happening? And also, you know, you also spend time, you know, speaking to government where they showed you technologies. Anything which came out from there, anything, you know, any lessons from there?
I think as a technologist, and you know, I'm a technologist from, you know, a long time ago where I actually even programmed in machine code. So I understand it all the way down to a very basic level. And so one of the allures of AI is that there's stuff that just happens. It's done for you. And what many people don't realize are the costs of relying on something that is relying on a faulty history.
Yeah. Data.
And so we take as fact things that are not fact, and we are out of the practice of checking that fact and taking the steps to change it. For instance, in the United States, actually around 30% of the judges are female. But if you ask AI to give you an image of judges, it will show that to be 3% women. In my opinion, one of the most violent things to do to a human being is to erase him or her or them. And so when you rely on faulty data that's based on a biased past, that to me is the biggest error that can happen with AI. And so we have to be vigilant to be able to actually check the results. You know, when I was in school, we could do our calculations, but then we had to check that physically, actually do the calculation to make sure that the results were true. And you might say, well, why would it do that? I've got, you know, this thing that will do it for me. It actually, first of all, kept me thinking and helped me to really understand what was going on so that I understood when things broke down, where to check.
Yeah.
And so for me, that is one of the challenges of generations of people who are now coming along, relying on something that is faulty.
Yes.
And still should have human intervention. And we can design it that way. We have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just said, I had an opportunity to meet a man called Jeffrey Hinton. If you Google him, he's the father of AI. And he speaks about there's nothing called bad AI, it's just humans. It's AI like children. Good manners, good behavior will give you good output.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be divisive, it's going to give you fault.
Right.
And the bias. So, yeah.
And there's this thing called tech debt. Anybody that's a technologist knows about that tech debt. You can build technology, and if you take a shortcut, this thing sort of doesn't work as well as it should, and there's this bad code in there that you're going to get to someday.
Yeah.
And the more you work at doing things that way, you have more tech debt. And we have the ability to build that up on a major scale in AI. And so again, those habits of actually going behind and having that great hygiene is the thing that I'm hoping to impress upon the folks that are working on this very important technology.
Brilliant. I want to focus on, I'm conscious we've got 7 minutes. I want to bring in at least 2 questions. I want to talk about the future, because I think people love to talk about past and they get scared. I think I'm more interested in the future and how we build more optimism. I mean, as I said, I mean, there's some of the most talented PR comms folks sitting here. You know, if they want to get out of this room and say, what's my purpose? What would you tell them?
Yeah. I'd say that's a journey. It's not a destination. As I shared, I figured out what it was I finally wanted to do after doing a bunch of other things and feeling like I was off track. But I didn't sit back and do nothing and wait for that thing to come. I did what my hands found to do. And in so doing, I was listening. I was listening to people. I was listening to my own experiences. I was formulating a plan, even though I didn't know I was formulating a plan. So it's like, live the life that you are given, take the opportunities that the experiences that you have in front of you give you, and at some point, the sum of those things will add up to what your purpose is. In the meantime, be purposeful. Go and help somebody. Go figure something out. Be active. And by all means, I mean, and this is part of the industry, be a listener, because you understand what it is that you need to promote. You need to understand what it is that is important to be promoted.
I love the part. I think you're going to be a better listener. Again, sorry, I keep bringing my kids because they keep talking over each other. So I just think about social media in their hand, and they speak to each other. When are they going to listen? Which obviously they don't listen to me and my wife. But just spend time listening. I mean, I've sat in conference rooms. Some of the people who stay quiet, I think, are the better, smarter thinkers, because they think long distance. Because everyone else is thinking now. If the world was built today, we all could do that, but it takes time and effort. I want to bring in anybody, I think 2 questions, and if anybody has no questions, I have a few more. So anybody, do me a favor, just put your hand out. If you have a purpose, talk about it, and yeah, ask a absolutely fearless question.
Hi, Brenda. I'm Kasturi. Thank you so much for every single word that you spoke today. I wish I could listen to it on repeat every single day before I go off to sleep.
Thank you.
On that note, I have a question. See, it's layered because community, how much can you lean on it? A lot of times, for example, like activism can threaten your basic rights, and things like in India we say roti, kapda, makan, which is your food, your shelter. That gets threatened. Yes. So how much can you really lean on to the community? And where to draw the line, because too much of everything becomes,
Oh, such a deep question you're asking. That's where the thoughtfulness and slowing down comes into play. So many times we are provoked by the experiences that we experience. We see something that we feel is unjust, or something we feel is unjust happens to us, and we want to react, we want to respond. But then where the maturity comes in is when we step back and we think we play chess and not checkers, is what I like to say to my kids. Yeah. Think about it. If I do this, then what's the next thing that could happen, and what's the next thing that could happen? And you can see in my mind, in my experiences, the wise person is that person who sits back first when they hear something, and they count to something, 10, 20, 40, while they think about those things. And then sometimes you got to go away and you got to weigh the odds. Now, if I speak up on this, what could happen? And then, am I willing to pay that price? And I'm not going to say that every time that I was thoughtful like that, I made the right decision for me. Because the fact of the matter is, I don't believe I've ever learned anything from my successes. I've only learned from my failures. But at the end of the day, you have to decide what is the thing that you're going to use your bravery to do. What is the thing that you're going to take the courage to do, and that you're willing to pay the price for when it comes at you? And even when you think about that price, I always think about the people who came behind me. I think about the thousands of people I will never know that led to me being able to sit right here today. And I think about the sacrifices that they made, and I use that as fuel to do something that might make me afraid. And when I do something afraid, I grow. So it's all very thoughtful. You have to decide. That's part of freedom, is when you get to decide what you're going to sacrifice and which battles you're going to take on today. Tomorrow, you might decide differently. And it's something that we iterate on, and that's when we build that character that allows us to ultimately decide what our purpose is.
So my name is Maithili. I'm from Bloomingdale Public Relations. So my question revolving around community and also social media as an aspect of it. Because of social media, communities are readily available on a wide array for all of us. how is it that we can build communities that are actually impactful and not just get into communities for the sake of it? And also not just for us, but also for the future generations, because the communities are always, long term. So do you think there's any practices or some things we can do to ensure that these communities are actually being built for the better?
I think that's a really important question. And I think it's part of what I've already said about listening. And even when you have an idea, like when I had an idea for Computer Science for All, I talked about it to everybody. I sat down and I had conversations. And out of those conversations, people would say, you need to talk to so-and-so, or you need to see so-and-so, or have you read this? So I was actually doing research by talking about it. And by talking about it, I was also getting responses back from the audience about what people thought of it and what they didn't like about it or what they thought my challenges would be. So I'm gathering data to figure out the best ways to do it. I'm also gathering colleagues who could help me. I didn't do it alone.
Yeah.
But from talking about it, I found my community that actually believed what I believed, or we believed the same things, and then we were able to take a step forward. The other important thing is just start. It's just like with any new product. You prototype it. You don't take it all the way to completion before you release it. You prototype it. You test it in the market. You make changes. You have more conversations, and you build as you go. And then you can see what the impact is of your idea in the community that you're building. But I wish you Godspeed for doing it.
Thank you.
We're on time.
We're at the time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.